Let me tell you a story about the time I got schooled by an HOA president, a bunch of cows, and weirdly the county clerk's office, though not necessarily in that order. No, really. If you'd told me years ago that my idea of a midlife crisis would look like a legal showdown over a bike path in the middle of a cow pasture, I would have laughed you right off my porch. But here we are. So picture this fluorescent lit clubhouse folding tables, and there's the HOA president sitting across from me, delivering her verdict with this smile so thin you could use it as fishing line. The bike path is already approved and irreversible, she tells me, gesturing out the window at my land, like the churned up dirt, and survey flags are just another act of God like rain or the seasons or property taxes. It's amazing how people can pretend your property is basically a suggestion. Now, I didn't raise my voice, didn't even roll my eyes, though God knows I wanted to. I waited, let the silence settle over the room like a wet blanket, and then slid just one document across the table. The state agricultural land use designation. Stamped, signed, still smelling faintly of printer toner and justice. I let my hand linger on it. For dramatic effect. The color started draining out of her face right on cue. Chairs shifted, someone cleared their throat, and even the lawyer stopped pretending to take notes. And right then, drifting through the open window, one of my steers let out this long, slow bellow. You want a soundtrack for a showdown? Try a 1,200-pound animal reminding everyone that out here not everything cares about bylaws and board votes. I swear that sound said more than any speech ever could. Thing is, I hadn't always lived out there. 20 years under buzzing office lights, city noise rattling through my bones, I'd had enough. I didn't buy that patch of rolling pasture for some power trip or to win at neighborhood politics. I bought it for the quiet, the kind that settles into your skin before dawn, where the only drama is whether the creek will flood the lower field when it rains too hard. The place wasn't much to look at. Weathered farmhouse, faded paint, a barn roof that looked like it might cave in if you stared at it too long. But the land god, it felt honest. In the mornings, with the fog sitting low and the cattle shuffling slow through the grass, I found a rhythm I'd forgotten existed. Get up before the sun, coffee steaming boots on 100 little tasks that make sense when the world is otherwise spinning off its axis. I liked it that way. I liked being left alone. Now the HOA. When I signed the paper, acknowledging they existed for the subdivision up the hill, not even on my land, it barely registered. Their houses looked like little Monopoly pieces, all lined up behind fancy hedges. I figured worst case I'd get a newsletter every now and then. Maybe the odd wave if someone's dog wandered close to the fence. Polite invisibility, I called it. Worked fine, for a while. Then one morning I spot these orange survey flags lined up like soldiers cutting right across the pasture where my cattle graze. At first I think utility mistake, no big deal. I yank a couple out muttering about teenagers with too much time on their hands. But then afternoon comes, a letter in the mailbox, we're excited to announce a new community wellness bike path. And wouldn't you know it, the map shows a big proud line going smack through my property. Not a question, not a request, just an announcement. I'm sitting there thinking, maybe I'm missing something. I check the deed boundaries, grazing permit. Yeah, all in order. No easement, no right-of-way, nothing but me and the cows. I figure once I point this out, someone will slap their forehead and the whole thing will disappear. But then more flags, then survey stakes, then one fine morning a crew shows up just traipsing onto my land like it's some kind of blank canvas for their next wellness project. Tape measures, snapping notes getting scribbled, not a single. Hey, mind if we... to be heard. And my cattle, God bless them, start bunching up, ears flicking, eyeing the newcomers like they're wolves instead of guys in khakis. It's the kind of thing that makes you feel less like an owner and more like an afterthought. Now, a normal person might storm over, demand answers, maybe toss a flag or two. But honestly, I was too surprised for anger. I just watched hands on the fence rail, letting it all sink in. That night, I wrote the world's most polite email to the HOA, explained about the cattle, the lack of easement, the state regulations, attached copies of everything legal I had. Please pause construction until we clarify, I wrote. Figured that'd slow things down. The reply came quick. Too quick. Thank you for your concern, it read. The project has been reviewed and approved according to community guidelines. No mention of my actual points, just a line about shared benefits and cooperation appreciated. If emails could pat you on the head, this one would have. Things escalated from there. More stakes now with spray paint. One morning I find a laminated notice zip-tied to my fence telling me to secure livestock away from the path corridor for construction. I'm standing there, wind rattling the plastic, thinking, are you serious? They weren't just crossing my land, they were telling me how to manage it. So I try again. This time I cite chapter and verse, state law, county ordinances, liability clauses. I ask for a meeting. I want to know which attorney signed off on this and how they plan to keep some city kid from getting flattened by a startled steer. Silence. Then construction equipment appears at the property edge, idling like a dare. Neighbors start acting weird. Some avoid eye contact. Others linger just a little too long at the fence. One older guy shuffles over while I'm fixing the gate, says, "They say it'll help property values." He sounds like he's apologizing for World War II, not a bike path. And then the letter. Community compliance violation, it says. Obstructing approved improvements. Apparently my cows are a hazardous condition. There's talk of fines, of liens, of remediation. I laugh out loud. The idea that my cows on my land with my permit are suddenly a public menace. It'd be funny if it wasn't so bureaucratically terrifying. That's when I realized they thought my silence was permission. So I responded. Again. More documents, a formal request for a meeting, this time CCing everyone from the board to their lawyer's secretary. I demanded a stop to construction for safety reasons. And lo and behold, they scheduled an HOA board meeting, my name right there under homeowner concerns. So now it was official, gloves off. The clubhouse looked like a scene from a bad sitcom. Beige walls, bad lighting, neighbors shifting in their chairs, unsure whether to say hi or act like I was contagious. When my turn came, I laid out the facts. Pasture zoning, safety, no easement, the whole 9 yards. I even referenced specific statutes. I thought maybe now they'll see reason. Nope. The president, let's call her Linda, because of course her name is Linda, listens with that same thin smile, thanks me for my input, and launches into a speech about wellness and connectivity. When I mention liability, she waves it off. Insurance will handle it. When I point out insurance doesn't create access rights, she interrupts, says they've consulted counsel. No details, just more authority by osmosis. One board member suggests I relocate the cattle. Another wonders why I haven't secured the fence better. There's this sense like I'm the difficult one for not moving my life aside for their vision of community. The next week, the fines start rolling in. Each letter blander than the last, each one ignoring everything I'd sent. The bike path markers push deeper into my pasture. And then here's the twist. My partner, who'd been pretty quiet through all this, says, maybe you should stop emailing and start documenting. Every stake, every incident, every time they cross that line. Honestly, it felt like the kind of advice you'd get from a private investigator, not the person you eat breakfast with. But she was right. So that's what I did. Photos, dates, times, copies of the original county survey requests for easement records. Turns out there weren't any. Some neighbors stopped walking their dogs near the fence. Others just watched from a safe distance, curiosity shaded with unease. I told my partner I'll take it as far as the law does, which if you knew me before, all this is about as confrontational as I get. I became an amateur property lawyer. Every night I'd be hunched over at the kitchen table, highlighter in hand, learning more about zoning laws than most city planners. Weeks pass. The HOA's replies get colder, more bureaucratic, as if the only problem here is my inability to see the big picture. They threaten, they fine, they reframe. One day the president tells me, don't be stubborn, think of the greater good. And it hits me, I'm not just the problem, I'm the villain in their story. That's when I stopped hoping for compromise and started thinking in terms of leverage. If they wanted to play the authority game, I'd play the jurisdiction game. Late nights cross-referencing deeds and plats, scanning in those original yellow documents that outlived most of the board. And then tucked in the county archives, I find it the original subdivision approval. Stamped, signed, crystal clear, my parcel is excluded from recreational access. Has been, always was. Suddenly the story isn't about me being difficult. It's about the HOA having built their dream bike path on quicksand. Their entire argument collapses in the face of one ancient document. The meeting where it all flips is almost comically bland. Same room, same bad coffee, same faces expecting to win. I arrive early, folder in hand, and when the time comes, I don't make a speech. I just lay out the deed, the county map, the zoning cert, the old planning record with its big ugly no access condition. The HOA lawyer leans in, reads, and you can almost see the gears grinding to a halt. Linda's confidence cracks. The lawyer mutters about needing to review further. No one argues, no one threatens. I leave copies for the record and walk out. You'd think I'd feel triumphant. I didn't. What I felt was relief, like a storm passing after weeks of pressure. My land, my rules finally respected, not because I asked nicely, but because I outlasted them. Because I learned the rules better than they did. Because I didn't blink first. Here's the thing, no one tells you about justice. Sometimes it's slow, sometimes it's boring, but when it finally happens, it's undeniable. That's what happened here. The truth sat on the table, old and unimpressed by anyone's opinions. Karma in my book smells a lot like old paper and legal ink. So now I wonder, at what point does progress turn into trampling someone else's rights? Who gets to decide whose land is just land and whose life is just an obstacle? Is it always about who can last longer, dig deeper, or hire the better lawyer? Or is there a point where basic decency is supposed to win out? Anyway, if you've ever tangled with an HOA, city hall, or just a neighbor who thought property line was more of a suggestion, you know the feeling. Let me know what you think. Ever fought for something everyone else thought was already lost? Ever been on the other side? I'd love to hear your take. Where's the line between standing your ground and just being stubborn? Drop a comment. This kind of story, trust me, it's never just about the land.
Cảm ơn các bạn đã xem video.